interesting. That Senator Tim Kaine, I know that the speakers were coming on so quickly there that we didn't get his name up on the screen, but he is a senator from Virginia, which is always an interesting swing state
Right.
on the East Coast. It can vote Republican or Democrat. He happens to be a Democrat, but his calling up the story in the book of Job in the Bible about, yes, there was evil in the world, and yes, there were bad things that were happening to him, but the whole the chapter after chapter after chapter, the whole purpose of that book is to get is to see how true his heart is, and is he going to stay true to his principles, and then driving that home to the point of, well, where are we in this country, and do you believe in the Constitution, or do you not? And anybody who is, who thinks that you can just exclude a group of people based on their religion should ask themselves, well, then how would I feel if that was my religion? Or if they said, all the people with no religion have to leave.
Well,
one way or the other, it's ludicrous. It would never fly in a country that has operated on constitutional principles for 200 years and is not only demeaning to millions of people in this country, but is also, I think, going to drive such a wedge between Trump and everybody else in the GOP that I think today we're closer to him leaving the race as a Republican and entering as an independent.
You think so? That's a really interesting point. Here are 5 bullet points in the top 5. Obviously, a lot of backlash over Trump's, I guess you could say, a Muslim man. Basically, the whole concept of a religious test, not letting any of them into the country.
Mm-hmm.
Then GOP presidential candidates responding. Paul Ryan just spoke about this, the Speaker of the House, responding, saying that Trump doesn't reflect American values. Even Dick Cheney called Trump's plan un-American. I mean, J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter books, said that Trump is worse than Voldemort, for anyone that is familiar with either
there you go.
Harry Potter book or movie series.
Okay, so we can always try to find some moment of humor in the ridiculousness of it all. So, okay, well, there you go, worse than Voldemort.
The 5th bullet point goes back to what you were saying about being welcoming with open arms. The Indiana Archdiocese welcomed a Syrian refugee family, despite the fact that the governor of Indiana does not want the refugees in his state.
Yeah.
So.
Well, now this is the interesting part of it all, is that what Donald Trump has done is to take away the other stories that are out there that you do have a difference of opinion on whether or not, I guess some people are saying, never let the refugees in. Others are saying, let them all in now, the system works fine, and others are somewhere and they're saying we better slow down and really check our vetting process if the FBI director says I can't guarantee it. So you have plenty of broad varying perspectives, but not on this because it's so ridiculous what he said.
Well, the whole country, the United States, the reason people left Europe to come to the United States was for religious freedom.
Sure.
That's literally what this country was founded upon. And for those of you viewers out there that agree with Donald Trump and find his viewpoint to be American, well, go back and read your American history books and figure out where America was, how it was founded on in the first place.
Well,
you're a history expert. You know it.
Yeah.
Firsthand.
So, the thing is that we will see, and Sami, how many times, for those of you who are just watching the first time with the 5 bullet points and everything we do here, but how many times have we talked in the past about remarks that Trump has made that were outrageous enough that you just thought, wow, well, this is just gonna can any chance he has. And that's never happened. It
hasn't. He offended veterans when he made those comments about McCain. He's offended women in the past. He's offended Latinos.
Right.
I'm sure there's another group he's offended.
Sure. So we will see. Now, I was trying to make this point to some people in the newsroom the other day, which was, well, how can, the question is then, well, how can Donald Trump be having numbers this high? And people think, well, then he, potentially would be our next president. But I really think the way you have to look at it is as follows. roughly, and this is not exact, but roughly, say about a third of the country are registered Democrats, about a third of the country are registered Republicans, and about a third of the country are independents. I think that's probably pretty close. That's actually somewhat close to what it is here in Arizona. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit lower for the Democrats, a little higher for the Republicans. The independent numbers are large. So when they are polling for Republican primaries,
right,
most of the time they are polling people who are Republican.
logically,
right? Okay.
right?
So right there, you're only dealing with a third of the populace of the country.
Well, and if there's 33% of those polled that support Donald Trump out of the 1/3 of the country that are Republicans, well, 1/3 of 1/3 is 1/9, guys, and there's my math for the day.
Yes. Well, and that's my
11%.
point. Correct. And that's my point, is because of the unique nature of this election cycle's field of candidates, which is there are way too many.
Way too many.
Way too many. You have people spread across so many different candidates that one guy with 25% or 30% is probably capped at 30%. And if he was just running against a couple of other likely candidates, the numbers might be completely different. But you are exact. My point was exactly what you made, which was we're talking about 1/3 of 1/3, or somewhere roughly about 10% of the country.
Right.
You can get 10% of the country to agree to just about any crazy thing, honestly, right?
I'm sure.
mean, look at some of the polls. I mean, even if 90% went this way, you'd still find 10%. I mean, let's say 90% of America feels pretty strongly that the Cardinals are going to win the Super Bowl.
Ron is in that group.
There might be 10% still out there who are rooting for the Carolina Panthers. I don't know. Anyway, so it's just a little bit of perspective on where we are in
There's
this.
always someone that's going to think or agree with something considered fairly absurd.
Yes.
Is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Although not about the Cardinals. It's really interesting. I went on Facebook, on my Facebook page yesterday, and we shared it on the Fox 10 Facebook page, and it's had I think over 50,000 views now and hundreds of shares. There was a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife who were holding up a sign at the last Cardinal game in St. Louis saying, "We traveled 5,000 miles from the Ukraine." Or from Ukraine to root on our Arizona Cardinals.
Wow.
And so I'm trying to track those people down.
That's so cool.
It is so cool to think that somebody would have traveled all that way to root on these guys. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
We have a home game this week, right?
yeah, it's Thursday night against the Minnesota Vikings. And then I just saw that this really frosts me. NBC stole another game from us, from Fox. Did you hear about this?
No.
Yeah, they're flexing, as they call it, and moving yet another Cardinal game into Sunday
we're so
Night
good.
Football.
It's one of those things where it's like,
America
well,
does
you're
love
upset.
that team, yeah.
You're upset because
I am.
our network is losing it, but on the bright side, you're also excited because all it does is reflect the fact that we are a winning team right now.
Plus, with the crazy schedule that we're on, being super early morning people, then I can never stay up and watch those nighttime games. Anyways, but back to the task at hand. Did we cover everything on your list?
I think so. Backlash over. Let's play Trump's comments.
Oh yeah, we absolutely
we've been
better
talking
do
about it nonstop, and most people in watching probably read something, but maybe they haven't actually watched. So this is Trump at his rally in South Carolina yesterday, where he basically, everyone's saying he's doubling down on the comments he had made earlier over the weekend.
Sure.
So I'm going to go ahead and play this for you guys now so you can hear it for yourself.
Okay, so remember this. So listen. Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. You have no choice. We have no choice. We have no choice. According to Pew Research, among others, there is a great hatred toward Americans by large segments of the Muslim population. Most recently, a poll from Center for Security Policy released data showing 25% of those polled agreed that violence against Americans, these are people that are here, by the way, people here, 25, not 1%. By the way, 1% would be unacceptable. 1% is unacceptable. 25% of those polled agreed that violence against Americans here in the United States is justified as part, think of that, as part of the global jihad.
These,
Hold on, there we go.
where did he get these poll results from?
I don't know.
Because if this were true,
Yeah.
if this were true, don't you think every other media outlet out there would be talking about it?
Possibly.
You would think that a
You
poll
would,
that would
yeah.
suggest that we would have heard about it by now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the only thing I have to say. Now I get it. You know, a lot of people are saying that Trump is, you know, strategically doing this, preying on people's fears. It's a political tactic. Josh Earnest has talked about it as a tactic, but has also talked about how this tactic could be very harmful in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Well, the thing that is, in terms of just covering the news, I was pretty sure coming out of the president's generally viewed as somewhat lackluster speech on Sunday night.
Right.
I was pretty sure that was going to drive the news cycle this week.
Well, it did yesterday.
Correct, but it probably should have for days to come, because Congress, you know, the way it works in Congress is they fly home to their districts over the weekend, and then on Monday is the day they fly back. So Tuesday, everybody's back on Capitol Hill. And so I figured, well, then we're going to start to get the reactions. Does the president have a plan? I do see where Senator McCain gave an interview today who says, I still don't think the president has a coherent plan for defeating Islamic terrorists. But Donald Trump has totally usurped that entire direction that the news cycle was headed by doing this. And so, in a way, the debate that we really should be having, because this is never going to happen, what he's talking about, the debate we really should be having is how involved are we going to get as a country in the fight against ISIS, up to and including ground troops, and do we have to confront the fact that that might be necessary? That, to me, is the serious debate we should be having in this country. And instead, we're spending the whole day now talking about a ridiculous suggestion by Donald Trump. It's pretty interesting. It's kind of mind-blowing, to be honest with you.
Right, and all of the clips that we're getting from Fox National, or most of them at least, have to do with politicians responding to Trump.
Yeah.
But I will say, yesterday when I logged in
Yeah.
to pull clips, all of the clips were politicians reacting to Obama's speech.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
always someone reacting to something said the night before.
Yeah, sure.
And speaking of politicians reacting to Obama's speech, and speaking of Trump, Trump also did respond via Twitter. He was tweeting different comments in response to Donald Trump. And specifically, there was a moment during Obama's speech where he was preaching tolerance, talking about how Muslim people are your neighbors and are sports heroes or athletes. And Trump was like, I'd like to see what athletes he's talking about, or something to that extent.
Oh, yeah.
And then the internet went wild as they started tweeting and posting pictures and articles of Donald Trump with Muhammad Ali. So it's like, okay, the guy nicknamed the greatest in the sport of boxing, who you are seeing not only as, you know, you don't only know about him, you're pictured with him.
Sure.
It's just like, those are the things that make you look bad.
Right.
It's like, you can have your points of view and people can disagree with them all you want.
Yeah.
Just make sure that there's no evidence that completely negates your point of view.
Okay,
That's
that's
what I'm
true,
saying,
but I
like-
do think Donald Trump thinks he plays to a slightly different set of rules than everybody else, because I just don't think I think
He doesn't
for
care.
whatever reason he gets away with saying all this stuff that nobody else would get away with saying.
Right.
That's number one. You know, and number two is just
Oh, you have to go to your meeting.
oh gosh, I'm gonna have to do number two later.
Oh,
Okay.
man.
Anyway,
Well, on that note, I'll play Fiorina responding to Trump. How about that?
Yeah, that
Since
sounds
we're
fine.
talking about it.
okay, good talking to you, and nice talking about the top 5 today. That was good.
The time's run.
Okay.
All right, let's hear what Carly Fiorina had to say.
I think his overreaction is as dangerous as Barack Obama's underreaction. And here's what the two of their proposals have in common. We all get frustrated when Obama recognizes that the government is incompetent, and so he then tramples on our constitutional rights by talking about taking away our Second Amendment rights. Donald Trump is saying the government is incompetent, and therefore let's trample on the Constitution by holding a religious test, which is most definitely a violation of our Constitution. What I say is, let us make our government competent. And unfortunately, Donald Trump doesn't know how to do that. Barack Obama doesn't know how to do that, but I do. I'm not a member of the establishment. I'm a conservative outsider. And I am running for president because I think it is time we take our country back. And that means we cannot hand the presidency to a career politician again, but we also cannot hand our presidency to incompetent people who talk tough but who won't deliver because they can't deliver. Donald Trump says, for example, you don't want to know my strategy to defeat ISIS. That's because he doesn't know how to defeat ISIS. I do. I have been extremely specific about what we have to do here at home and abroad to defeat ISIS. We must deny them territory. We must build up a coalition of Sunni Arabs who will help us fight. We must take advantage of every capability we have in this country to track down would-be terrorists. By the way, we are not engaging the private sector at all. I come from the technology industry. We need to engage the private sector because technology has moved on a long way, 14 years to be precise, from the Patriot Act, 4 years from Obama's cyber strategy. We can fix this, but we're not going to fix it by fear-mongering and rabble-rousing.
All right, guys, now let's listen to what Jay Johnson has to say about Donald Trump. Secretary of Defense. Not Secretary of Defense.
In responding to this new environment, we must not vilify American Muslims. We must not throw a net of suspicion over American Muslims and an entire religion. We must not force American Muslims to run and hide and retreat to the shadows. This would be counter to our Homeland Security efforts, and it is un-American. The reality is that there are 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. It is the second largest religion in the world, behind Christianity. 1 in 4 people on this planet are Muslim. Within the Muslim faith, which spreads across every continent of this planet, are sects as diverse as Christianity. Within this country alone, there are about 3 million Muslims. They include African Americans, Egyptian Americans, Indonesian Americans, Iraqi Americans, Syrian Americans, and many others of different races and skin colors. The overwhelming majority of American Muslims and Muslims worldwide are men, women, and children of peace who seek to live their lives in peace and want nothing to do with terrorism. The very essence of the Islamic faith is peace. The standard greeting, Assalamu alaikum, is peace be upon you. The principal victims of the so-called Islamic State and Al-Qaeda are Muslims. The 4 million men, women, and children who have left their homes in Syria as refugees are fleeing the very same terrorism and violence that we are concerned about. That as long as I'm Secretary of Homeland Security, I will continue to speak out against the discrimination, vilification, and isolation that American Muslims face in these challenging times.